Friday, the 22nd of September 2017, Transport for London announced that they were not going to be relicensing Uber as an operator, as it considered Uber not to be fit and proper, and gave serious justifications for this. On the same day, Fred Jones, Uber head of cities, was interviewed on Sky News and came out fighting like his old CEO Travis Kalanick. Let's hear what Fred had to say.
Mr. Jones, what do you make of the ruling today? Obvious disappointment. Do you think any of the criticisms are warranted?
Well, look, first of all, over 3.5 million Londoners who use the app and over 40,000 licensed drivers who rely on the service to earn a living will be absolutely astounded by the decision today. I think it's clear by trying to ban Uber in London, the Mayor and TfL have caved to a small minority of individuals and groups that want to restrict competition and choice in the capital.
Oh dear Fred, now do you think you should have actually apologised to your customers and drivers and accepted the finding of TfL instead of trying to shift the blame? Now here is a reminder what the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, stated, quote, "I have every sympathy with Uber drivers and customers affected by this decision, but their anger really should be directed at Uber. They have let down their drivers and customers by failing, in the view of TfL, to act as a fit and proper operator."
I think the impact of this decision will not only prevent 3.5 million Londoners getting an affordable ride around their city, but it could potentially, if it stands, put over 40,000 licensed drivers out of work.
Well, now this is a very interesting statement, Fred, because although Uber has gone to great lengths to deny that it employs drivers, even to the extent that it has appealed a court ruling that defined that they were indeed employing drivers, can you please elaborate on how these drivers will suddenly have no potential to carry on as TfL licensed private hire drivers? They still retain both their TfL driver and vehicle licenses regardless of whether Uber exists in London or not, and are free to carry on driving for one of the 2,445 other private hire operators in the City of London. Additionally, all those TfL minicabs that predominantly work outside of London under Uber in such areas as Brighton and Hove could in fact become legitimate Brighton and Hove licensed drivers after undertaking and accepting the high standards that Brighton Council expects via its licensing system, which includes a knowledge test and the fitting of CCTV in all Hackney carriage taxi and private hire cars. As far as competition is concerned, these drivers will still be available to the public, albeit via different operators or companies, and consequently continue to make a living. Our experience in Brighton and Hove has been that Uber fully expects all private hire drivers to work for as many different operators and companies as they wish, and has even complained that this does not happen in Brighton and Hove. On this basis, one would presume that TfL drivers that work on the Uber platform do not accept jobs exclusively from Uber, but also from a multitude of other various operators and companies as encouraged by Uber. Therefore, taking all of this into account, I would really consider that your statement about 40,000 TfL drivers being put out of work is actually very misleading, Fred.
What about safety, though? That's a key worry that the Mayor of London and the transport regulator, they're saying that they have concerns that Uber's not providing the high standards required of taxi drivers, particularly in relation to passenger safety.
Well, look, safety has been integral to our service since we launched in London over 5.5 years ago. In fact, all our drivers are licensed by Transport for London, and they've been through the same enhanced background checks as London Black Cab drivers. Furthermore, we've always pioneered through our technology new safety features that don't exist elsewhere in the industry. For example, every trip is tracked with GPS, so you always know where you are.
Okay now Fred, now firstly, what action did you take to ensure that none, if any, of the 13,000 TfL licensed minicab drivers that were recently written to by TfL informing them that they had 28 days to submit a new enhanced DBS because their current one was considered invalid for whatever reason, are not working on the Uber platform for the protection and safety of Uber customers? Secondly, Fred, your statement that the safety features that Uber uses does not exist elsewhere in the industry is again very misleading. I can assure you that this technology is not new and is certainly used by the trade, as there are other systems that provide driver and vehicle ID to the customer along with GPS tracking. Additionally, at a Brighton and Hove taxi trade meeting, you publicly stated that you considered CCTV to be unnecessary. Now, CCTV is fitted in all Brighton and Hove licensed taxis and private hire vehicles. You also stated at that meeting that private hire vehicle identification on such vehicles was not needed, and Uber has actually encouraged Brighton and Hove Uber private hire vehicles to remove all identification, much to the dismay of the local trade that has worked tirelessly for the protection of the general public. We even stated to you that this state of affairs is taking the trade back to the 1970s, before private hire was legitimised by the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976. And you say that safety is an integral part of the Uber service. Utter rubbish.
They're saying that their worries include the approach to reporting serious criminal offences. Do you understand that particular worry?
So we've always had a requirement to report serious incidents to TfL and have done so, and we've passed every audit that TfL have conducted of our operations since launching. Furthermore, we have a dedicated team that works with the likes of the Met Police to help them with their inquiries and to investigate any incidents. Even earlier this week, myself and colleagues were meeting with senior Met officials to work out how we could go even further and deliver more to protect the public.
Now, it's important at this juncture to remember that this interview took place on the day that TfL announced its decision not to license Uber in London, which was Friday, September the 22nd, 2017. Now, on August the 13th, 2017, The Guardian reported the following along with other media outlets. Uber has been accused by police of allowing a driver who sexually assaulted a passenger to strike again by not reporting this attack, along with other serious crimes. In a strongly worded letter, Inspector Neil Billany of the Metropolitan Police Taxi and Private Hire Team suggested the company was putting concerns for its reputation over public safety. So Fred, in the context of that time frame of that article from August 13, 2017, where Inspector Neil Billany accused Uber of not reporting a serious sexual attack, do you think that your statement on Friday, September 22nd, 2017, about your meeting with the Met Police was only instigated on the clear basis that the Uber system of reporting serious crimes to the police had lacked previous integrity, which is exactly attributed to one of the reasons why TfL has refused to relicense Uber? So Fred, on this basis, would you agree that effectively your meeting with the police was in fact far too late, as the horse had already bolted?
So why do you think that all of these measures that you've taken have simply not satisfied the concerns of Transport for London and the Mayor of London?
Well, I think what's clear by this decision is the Mayor and Transport for London have caved under extreme pressure from a small number of individuals and groups that want to restrict choice for consumers and competition within London.
Well, firstly, it's very interesting that you clearly avoided addressing the actual question put to you with regards to the reasons as why TfL are refusing to relicense Uber. Now, to remind you, this is the statement that TfL issued stating the main reasons. Quote, TfL has concluded that Uber London Limited is not fit and proper to hold a private hire operator's licence. TfL considers that Uber's approach and conduct demonstrated a lack of corporate responsibility in relation to a number of issues which have potential public safety and security implications. These include its approach to reporting serious criminal offences, its approach on how medical certificates are obtained, its approach to how enhanced disclosure and barring service (DBS) checks are obtained, its approach to explaining the use of Greyball in London, software that could be used to block regulatory bodies from gaining full access to the app and prevent officials from undertaking regulatory or law enforcement duties. So would you care to address this now? Now, secondly, where you state, I quote, who want to restrict choice for consumers and competition within London, unquote, are you familiar with the term predatory pricing as often quoted on the internet in the context of Uber-related stories?
The impact of that decision, if it stands, will put over 40,000 licensed drivers out of work with no means to support themselves, their families, their loved ones, which is why, as an absolute priority, we're looking to support those drivers. We're going to challenge the decision immediately and try and continue to operate beyond the 30th of September.
So we've already touched on the statement from you that apparently 40,000 TfL minicab drivers will be out of work. However, as you have mentioned this again, we can then readdress it here. You stated the impact of this decision will impact over 40,000 licensed drivers out of work which no means to support themselves and their families. Now, given that it's very clear that these drivers will still retain their TfL vehicle and driver licenses, can you please go into absolutely every detail as to why they cannot continue working under self-employment with other operators and companies? Do you think that your statement was effectively simply trying to pull at the heartstrings of the public to gain sympathy by providing misleading information? Or do you still stand by your statement that these licensed drivers will not have any methods to support themselves on the basis that Uber can no longer be trusted to be a TfL licensed operator? Now, ironically, it is internationally well known that Uber is working on self-driving cars and has expressed many times that the goal is to produce self-driving taxis. Therefore, Fred, would you agree that it is Uber's ultimate ambition to get rid of all of Uber drivers anyway? Perhaps in reality there are crocodile tears because Uber needs all those 40,000 drivers to pay for the investment into self-driving taxis that will end up making those drivers redundant anyway.
Looking in terms of employment record, what about the independent workers of Great Britain and the case that they brought? There's been much reported about the conditions that Uber drivers have to undergo, and they've complained themselves that they're not happy with the way they're treated.
Well, look, first of all, I think it's important to understand that private hire drivers have been self-employed for decades, long before Uber launched, and so this isn't an Uber thing. What the data in the independence polls show is that over 90% of drivers like working with Uber. They love the flexibility of being their own boss and being able to adapt their schedule to fit around their other commitments, both in the family and the community. Last year, on average, drivers on the app made more than £15 an hour after we had taken our service fee.
So Fred, would you agree that as these drivers are, as you stated, self-employed, then they are free to go and work on other platforms and will certainly have opportunities to work with other operators and other companies, so they won't be out of work? Because Fred, you can't have it both ways. Now, you stated that the average driver on the app, quote, made more than £15 an hour after we have taken our service fee, unquote. Now, are you aware of the term of made in respect of gross and net? Because it's very clear that a driver would not have made £15 an hour after all the expenses such as car finance, fuel, insurance, and that £15 figure is in fact based on gross takings and not net income, which would significantly be less than the claimed £15 an hour which you are suggesting goes straight into the Uber driver's pocket.
You've launched an appeal. In the meantime, will there be anything that the company will do to change its practices, the way that you operate?
Well, look, we're always looking at improving our service, both to regulators, to riders, and the drivers that use our app. What we're urging people to do is voice their outrage at this decision by the Mayor and TfL. They need to save your Uber, so we're encouraging people to go to change.org to sign the petition and write to the Mayor directly to express their disbelief at this decision and urge him to change his mind.
Fred, why so angry and so defensive? But on reflection, do you think you should have instead taken the opportunity to take a humble approach instead of attacking the regulators like a petulant child who are in place to protect the public, and instead apologise to all of your Uber customers and drivers and admit that even after operating for some 5.5 years in London as a disruptive technology company, you failed to come up to the standards expected of you and indeed other private hire operators in the city? Do you think that you should have taken a more realistic stance like the new Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi and less Kalanick-like, where he stated, and I quote, "Whilst the impulse may be to say that this is unfair, one of the lessons I've learned over time is that change comes from self-reflection, so it's worth examining how we got here. The truth is, there is a high cost to bad reputation in respect of whether we did everything that has been said about us in London today, and to be clear, I don't think we did. It really matters what people think of us, especially in a global business like ours, where actions in one part of the world can have serious consequences in another. Going forward, it's critical that we act with integrity in everything we do and learn how to be a better partner to every city we operate in. That doesn't mean abandoning our principles. We will vigorously appeal TfL's decision, but rather building trust through our actions and our behaviour. In doing so, we will show that Uber is not just a really great product, but a really great company that is meaningfully contributing to society beyond its business and its bottom line." So Fred, you can see that sometimes it's better to eat a little bit of humble pie instead of acting like your old boss Travis Kalanick and come out fighting whilst blaming everyone else. A little bit of contrition would have been far better in this interview. So moving on to 3 days later, Fred Jones is back on Sky TV looking like he's just seen the headmaster and had a rap over the knuckles with a ruler. Now, perhaps the ex-CEO Travis Kalanick stance of blaming everyone else and come out fighting did not go down well with the new CEO Dara Khosrowshahi, and here is a reminder of what he stated.
Under national scrutiny, the CEO wrote this letter saying sorry. While he acknowledged the mistakes we've made and promised to change, his spokesperson asked for a second chance.
So here is Fred Jones now with a completely different attitude.
This is a cornerstone of what Dara, our new CEO, has set out for our next chapter as a company. And specifically in London, with regards to TfL's decision on Friday, we absolutely want to sit down with them to understand their concerns much better and work together to try and address them.
Finally, Fred, well done, and this is what you should have said in the first place. Now, surprisingly, Fred Jones has now been made a director as of October the 6th, 2017, and is probably replacing Joe Bertram, who resigned in September. Lastly, I'd like to offer my own humble opinion of where Uber is today. What has happened is the technology disruptor has been disrupted itself. It's always been known that the attitude of Uber is that it is far easier to ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. So we will have to see if Transport for London are in a forgiving mood. Now, customers love Uber because it is cheaper in some, but not in all cases, than other services. But cheapness comes at a price, and you cannot put a price on the safety and welfare of the general public, and of course the Uber drivers themselves, who work other areas that they are not licensed in and end up sleeping in their cars. The vehicles and drivers shown were in a public place and were there for several hours. No privacy violations took place. These videos were recorded for public interest and safety reasons.